All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Want to make sure we have all of the time to cover all of the wonderful content that we have to discuss tonight. So, hi everyone, welcome. My name is Carly O'Brien. I am the Literacy Services Manager here at RIF. If you've been to our webinars before, you're probably very familiar with me by now. But we're really excited and overjoyed to be kicking off our Every Family Counts webinar series for the new school year. And tonight we're focusing on ways that families can support writing at home for children in grades K-2. So whether you are an educator or a family member learning directly for yourself or an educator looking to relay information to families, no matter who you are or what your role is, you will be able to take away some strategies for tonight. And to those of you who joined us last year for our family series, thanks for coming back. And if this is your first time with us, welcome. You can watch any of our previous years worth of webinars on our website at riff.org/webinars, including this one. Tomorrow it will be up and live and ready. And I'll be sure to share this link as well as any other links that we talk about throughout the chat for tonight. So welcome and going to go ahead and get started. So for anyone new here, a quick word about us. We are RIF, Reading is Fundamental, the nation's largest children's literacy nonprofit, and our mission is to inspire the joy of reading and ensure that every child has the opportunities and resources that they need to become a strong, lifelong reader. And these webinars are part of our commitment to supporting educators and families with practical tools and joyful strategies to bring literacy to life. Tonight's session is going to be all about at-home writing strategy for grades K-2, and you'll learn simple, easy to implement tips using materials that you have readily available at your home. And I'm especially excited to welcome our guest speaker for this evening, Dr. Daris McInnis, assistant professor of literacy at Westchester University. Dr. McInnis has previously taught early elementary grades in Washington, D.C., and currently teaches courses in reading and writing instruction, multicultural education, and pre-service teacher preparation. His research focuses on family literacy, reading instruction, critical literacy, and learning outside of the classroom. He holds a doctorate in reading, writing, and literacy from the University of Pennsylvania, is a Pat Tillman Scholar, and previously served as an active duty ordnance logistics officer in the U.S. Army. And of course, he is a dear friend of ours at RIF. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Daris, and welcome. Super excited to hear your presentation for tonight. I know our audience is going to love it.
Carly, you are so kind. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for everyone for joining. We know that you could have been anywhere in the world, but you are here with us. So we're going to try to make this fun and quick and engaging. As Carly said, you may be watching this live. So we'll be taking some questions at the end for folks who are in the chat. For those of you who may be watching this on a webinar on the RIF website, I will leave my contact information at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Carly, if you can go to the next slide, please. For the agenda, we're going to start out with talking about some research. So we'll be looking at some research on writing development and writing at school, sort of looking at the parallels between the two of those. Then we'll get into some research on writing at home and how that mirrors what kids may see and do in school. We'll talk about how to create a writing friendly environment at home, thinking about some different concepts that you can implement with your little ones at home, doing some work with books, putting it all together, and then we'll have a Q&A. You go to the first slide. So I do want to sort of like preface this by saying we know that there are lots of apps and technology offers different exciting ways and avenues for writing development. But this presentation particularly, we want to focus on traditional methods using paper and pencils and other accessible materials. We recognize that tablets can be effective, particularly with mimicking like handwriting with a stylus, but we want to sort of like explore how we can reinforce these core skills and foster a love of literacy that uses some resources that could be available at home that mirror the in-person learning environment at school. So we'll start with talking about we all want for our kids to be more confident writers. But where does all this start? So first, we want to think about the fine motor foundation. So handwriting is not just about letters, right? It's also about the fine motor skills and building their dexterity. So think of activities like tracing, playing with Play-Doh, using crayons. These different skills help to build strength and can control in little hands. So even as something as simple as picking up small beads, right, can help develop the muscles that are needed for handwriting. Scribbling is serious business, right? Don't underestimate the power of the scribble. Early scribbling and drawing really lets kids experiment with what writing actually means, right? With, without the pressure and having to worry about formulating perfect letters, right? And putting those on the page. It's also about exploring how to make marks and tell stories and express ideas, all with these crucial foundations in writing. I also want to note, we do want to make it clear that you don't want to scribble on walls. So those of you who are parents or caretakers, you know what I'm talking about. So we will talk about where to write and where's the most appropriate place to write. When we get to that part in the presentation, we'll talk about the right environment. I also want to talk about how transcription can be a stepping stone for kids. So as kids progress, we focus on transcription skills, right? So letter formation, how to hold a pencil, and even invented spelling. And if you don't know what invented spelling is, it is exactly how it sounds. So kids can write out words the way that it sounds in their head. And so we're thinking about the letter sound correspondence. Usually kids can decode, right? These words because they're applying that letter sound knowledge as they write. Sight words are different, right? So these are words that are also called high frequency words. They don't necessarily they don't follow the basic phonics rules in English as we know. But kids can write those as well. But at home, we also want to encourage the kids to write the letters of the sounds that they hear in words. So with something like invented spelling, special may be written like, oh, I think I might be able to draw on this screen. If I can't, you know what? I can't, but that's okay. But I can spell it out. So special may be written like Speshul, right? Because that's the way that it sounds, right? All of the different the letters in special or cake may be written as Kak. Okay, so these skills build this important this letter sound knowledge and writing confidence for kids, and it makes it fun and experimental. And we also want to point out that these skills do unlock their ability to connect spoken language with written symbols. I also want to talk about how do we meaningfully integrate these skills. So the real magic happens when we link handwriting to spelling to real activities. I say that in quotes because instead of just copying letters, have your kids write out a story about their favorite toy or a thank you note, right? Or an apology to a sibling or a friend or a persuasive letter, right? If you want to have your child ask for something during the holidays, right? There's really an opportunity to get them to practice, right? Um, dear mom, dear parent, dear dad, dear sister, right? I would really like a blank because of blank, and then they can sign their name. This also helps them sort of see the purpose of writing. It really encourages them to write for longer periods of time and also experiment with more complex pieces of writing. So we want to, embrace the scribbles, celebrate the effort, right? To make the process of writing one that is meaningful. This is how we build strong and confident writers. Next slide, please. So writing is not a linear process. It isn't a rigid step-by-step thing that people do, despite like the ways in which we actually write. For me in academia, we have sort of like the paragraph structure of writing. It is a very dynamic back and forth process. So kids might jump between planning and writing, editing, revising, and sharing. And that's perfectly okay, right? Like if they seem like they're going backwards within this process, they might not be, right? They may just be building on some previous skills that perhaps they realized that they needed some more practice with. They're experimenting, they're learning, and they're figuring out what works best for them. I also want to uh, draw attention to some of the key stages of writing here. So we can break down these stages like this. This it can be pre-writing, drafting, revising, and publishing, right? But keep in mind that they're all interwoven. They all build on each other. Pre-writing is about brainstorming ideas. So you can do things like a mind map, a list, even talking with a friend. And for those of you who write often, albeit for your profession or even just for pleasure, you know that a lot of writing actually happens in your head. Have you ever been like driving in the car and then like you're thinking of something, you can write like half of a novel in your head. That's part of the pre-writing, um, sort of like the process for writing. Drafting is getting the ideas down on to paper. We want to focus on what you want to say, and keep in mind that this doesn't have to be perfect, right? Um, and for revising, we're thinking about where we refine, where we make the ideas clearer. We may add some details, may add some labels, some names, some adjectives. And for the publishing part, this is where we get to share the final product, right? And to celebrate the work. And early on, we want to encourage kids to try different types of writing to understand who they're writing for and make sure that their ideas connect. It's very crucial to link the idea generation, particularly so that we can understand how print works. And then going back to those basic transcription skills, because all of these support each other. And it's my philosophy and belief, and also based on some research, and I have some references at the end. But the best way to motivate young writers is to make the process meaningful, right? Not just this rote and mundane activity where they're just copying things down. You actually want to make this a meaningful experience for them. So think about some real world tasks that connect to their lives and their interests. So this can be writing a letter to a pen pal. This can be creating a comic strip if your kids are into comics. This can be they can make a sign or um, maybe like a label for like a school event. And also, we also want to be sure that the teaching of this, right, is culturally sustaining and relevant, because we do want to also, we recognize that writing can support bi and multilingualism in kids. And then by embracing this dynamic approach and connecting this writing to real world experiences and purposes, we can then empower our kids to become much more confident and effective communicators. Next slide, please. And then thinking about some of the research for writing at home. So, did you know? You may know this, but did you know that kids whose families actively support their writing at home, they often show significantly stronger skills in reading and in writing overall. This is because kids really do get a lot more exposure and practice with writing outside of school. They have a very structured and limited time to do it in school. It may be in writing workshop. It may be during their English language arts block, but you do want to give them some opportunities to practice this at home. So when families participate in structured writing activities at home, it really does have a powerful effect on the kids' writing fluency, their understanding, and their overall school performance. It's about creating the dedicated time and space for writing. And so this can be like writing in a journal or a diary. This can be working together on a family story, or even creating some labels for household items. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. One thing to keep in mind is that consistency is the key, particularly for communication between teachers and parents. This is essential, and it really does create this bridge between home and school. I can give you some tips. Riff can give you some tips. We have some resources for you all to consider outside of school. And we also encourage you, to kind of keep that communication with your child's teacher very consistent. Ask them about what they're working on in school. Can we practice these skills, these letters, or this genre of writing at home? And also, I also want to say that providing feedback on their writing at home, it sort of it mirrors what happens in the classroom, and also it reinforces that learning and motivates the child to want to write more. I also want to talk about creating a literacy-rich environment at home. So this is having plenty of books, some writing materials, and supportive writers who can help them along the way. All of this is important. This is especially important for kids who may be struggling with reading or writing, right? This really is about trying to make the process fun and accessible. And one of the most effective approaches is collaboration, again, between the educators and the families at home. And so we recommend just having some regular updates, sharing some strategies with your teachers, so they may need to know what's working for your child at home. That if they're struggling with writing at school, share with the teacher, I try this with them, right? And then I can get them to write for a longer time. We do this strategy, we work on this, right? And vice versa. The teachers can share some prompts or techniques that work in the classroom if you can't get your kid to want to be motivated to write at home. Next slide. So we're going to get to some of the strategies and things that you can do at home, like right now, tomorrow, this week. So the first is creating a writing-friendly environment. So how can we make writing a natural and exciting part of a child's life at home? The first thing I recommend is to create a designated writer space. And so this can be their special corner or a desk just for writing, right? I want to be clear that you want to make sure that this is stocked with everything that they need, right? Pens, pencils, papers, markers, crayons, notebooks, erasers, right? This sort of easy access in this designated spot can help to reinforce the idea that writing itself is a purposeful activity. You want to be sure to showcase their work, right? Display your child's writing at home, around the home, on the fridge, a bulletin board, or I've seen some people frame their kids' writing. If you are as dramatic as I am, you can actually have it framed. I have two colleagues of mine who have their kids writing up in their offices. It really is beautiful to see that. And this is a very powerful way to celebrate their efforts and to boost their confidence, and then to make the writing a very, very visible way to value that part of everyday life. You also want to think about establishing a routine, right? To have this consistent space. Um, sorry, to have this consistent space for writing. It sends a message about its importance, right? Kids learn where and when it's appropriate to write, just like having the designated spot for homework, right? This also fosters a positive, very writing rich environment that encourages them to pick up a pen or pencil and express themselves. If you are a person who has some minimal space in your home, there's nothing wrong with writing on the floor or on a table. Just make sure that it's a surface that's hard and flat. Um, I also want to recommend that you keep the materials together. So this can be in like a utensil caddy or a container, just to establish some normalcy with the routine. And you can even take this outside of the house. So you can write at the library or even in spaces like a coffee shop. So with this, by creating the designated space to showcase their work and then to establish this routine, you can really think about how do you transform your home into this very creative space where young writers can learn to develop their skills and love for writing. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk about environmental print. And so let's face it, right? Sometimes we struggle a lot to get our kids engaged with writing. I see this with some of the students who my students work with and their field placements. And but the good news is though, we can truly make it fun by integrating some writing into everyday tasks. So the first is to label everything. Right. It may drive you crazy at first, but there's a method to the madness. So grab some masking tape and a marker. You can have your child label different things around the house. So they can write like a label for a door, some labels for rooms, labels for their toy chests, labels for containers, labels for spices, labels where you can have them designate things that are for them and not for you, right? So like their toys, etc. This is really a fantastic way for them to connect print with real objects in the world, just so we can show them that this is not just an arbitrary task. Um, we write to communicate things, right? When folks can't see you or hear your voice very often, your writing is the first thing that they get to interact with, right? With you. And so this is a really good way to do that. And it just makes it fun, right? And it makes it very meaningful because it's tied to their immediate environment. So this is where the term environmental um, print comes from. Think about how do you can be a grocery list like genius with writing, right? So where you can turn your grocery list into a writing adventure with your kids, where they can actually write out the grocery list, right? Or if they're not quite ready to do that, when you're in the supermarket or wherever you get your food, and as you're shopping, if they have written the list, they can take the ownership of scratching things off of the list, right? I know that a lot of us, and myself included, we use the Notes app or something on our phone, but I've been getting back to handwriting things, and I also have been encouraging that of parents I work with whose kids are working on their writing. They can write down the items, and if they can't sort of like sound out the letters, they can draw some pictures or even cut out some things from flyers or coupons or newspapers and put them on the list. Um, I also want to think about like how do you actually get the kids involved with organizing things too around the house, and so you can have them like label things like DVDs for those of you who still have them in the home. They can label different toys or board games around the house. All this really does help to reinforce this idea of writing and reading and organization as sort of these co-working skills for kids, and it shows them the connection between their daily lives. Next slide, please. I want to talk about extending kids' learning through the magic of stories. And so, one way that you can do this is to think about writing beyond the page. And so, for those of you who read books with your kids every night, if they have a favorite story, or if they even have books that they know by heart, ask your child what happens next, right? If you get to the end of a book or you're pausing in the middle of the book, have them tell you what they think can happen next, right? This is also a part of the skills that builds on their comprehension. It helps to think about like how are they using their context, their imagination here, right? And bringing this into learning. Encourage them to write, to draw, or to share their ideas with you, because doing this can really help their comprehension, their writing, developing those fine motor skills again. Kids love to show off their art, right? This also provides an opportunity for them to do that. Um, think about how they can label some pictures and stories of their own within the responses. And also, Riff offers some read aloud guides and tools for families. And this is in multiple languages, so it's not just in English. And these activities are aligned with many of the popular books that your kids may enjoy. And they have the idea of extending this learning through activities like art and writing, some of the things that we've been talking about. I don't know if Carly, you can put it in the chat, but for Riff, these guides can be found on their website. It is a free platform and a resource for everyone. They can be accessed right at home. And a lot of them are available for you all to use to think about this writing beyond the story. Next slide, please. And beyond just activities with creating your own books, there's also opportunities, or excuse me, beyond just writing based on books that you've read before, there's also an opportunity to create your own books. And so don't get intimidated by this. Just imagine the excitement of a child who creates their own like entire book, right? And after they do one, and they can create a book collection. And so just as a step by step, the first thing that you want to do is sort of guide the kids through each stage of writing a book. And so this is starting with sketching ideas, figuring out the main events to sort of bind the pages together. You want to create a storyboard before you begin, right? This is a good way to sort of plan the book and to help them understand that each of the pages within the book can introduce some characters, some dialogue, or even a plot twist. Um, I also want to encourage you to empower them to use their voice and dialogue. And so let their characters sort of come to life with creativity of choosing their own words, encouraging the kids to use some dialogue that creates a story structure. This dialogue can even go beyond the conventions of what we think of as standard English, right? If they have some words or some phrases or different things that they share with their friends, this really is a really great opportunity for them to see themselves as authors, as illustrators, and really pulling those ideas into the books. And to let them think about how they get to decide how the story ends. You tell me how the story ends. Involve them into the story, right? This also boosts their critical thinking skills and their narrative understanding because remember that every page tells a different story. And this is a really great and fun and exciting way to give them a chance to write. Next slide, please. So just to put all of this together, supporting writing at home is about trying to make it fun and meaningful and integrate it into everyday life. You really do want to focus on the engaging activities. So the key is to create activities that are both engaging and meaningful for the child. And so this means thinking beyond just worksheets and rote exercises for writing, because that can become boring and mundane. We're thinking about developing foundational skills like fine motor control, right? With holding a pencil, right? We're thinking about print awareness, understanding how letters work, and the understanding of how stories are structured, and to see themselves as storytellers, to see themselves as authors. We want to think about the practical strategies for success. So this includes saying, we can do this with strategies like creating the dedicated writing space, such as the writer's desk or the corner in your house or on the floor or on the table, or just having all of the writing materials together, incorporating authentic task of writing, like the labels for household items, the shopping list that we talked about, or even creating the personalized books, all of which can help to reinforce these skills in a very practical way. And ultimately, you do want to sort of like foster this positive attitude towards writing, because ultimately we do want to make this enjoyable at home to nurture this love for writing. I mean, let's be honest, it's happening a lot less for kids. I know in Pennsylvania, we've done things like we've cut like the cursive writing out of a curriculum, and so I understand the reasoning around that, but it's also to say that kids are getting less opportunities to write, less opportunities to develop those fine motor skills, that dexterity, the pressure on the paper. And so we want to think about how do we at home help children see writing as a tool for self-expression and for learning. And do it in a way that is much more effective than seeing it as a chore. And so keep in mind, we do want to create a very fun and positive environment where kids can learn with intention. Next slide, please. So we have some resources here that we will share with you all. So all of the hyperlinks are there. Um, My email is there, so you can feel free to reach out if you have any questions that, like, if you're watching this on YouTube. I'm also going to be doing a blog with Riff, so I'll be expanding on some of these ideas. Please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to connect with you all. I love this work. Very passionate, very serious about it, and yeah, I'm going to open it up for some questions.